This paper was presented at the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium 2025. Video coverage of this paper is provided by Highways News and sponsored by Mobius Networks, AGD, Smart Micro UK, TRL Software, Traffic Group Signals, AD Electronics, and 4-Way Consulting.
Thank you very much, Margaret. It's a pleasure to be back here. I was here in 2012, I think, last. Basically, the whole talk is contained in the title. So it's going to be about upstream gating so as to relieve downstream congestion. And if you do that at every single merge, so that you don't actually think about, scratch your head very hard, where is this traffic coming from or going to? You simply look at all merges and operate this system at each merge. And the purpose is not to minimize delay, but to maximize road network capacity. And particularly in the light of one or two talks this morning, road network capacity is, as everybody knows, very close to or at its limit. So if by using signals you can improve the actual capacity of the whole network, then this is good news for everybody. What you then do with any spare capacity is, of course, a political decision, and it may well go to active travel, cyclists, pedestrians, and so on. But this scheme is intended to maximize the size of the cake, not necessarily how the cake is divided among the modes. One of the beneficiaries of this, I suspect, will be the buses, and hence we have bus delays. So this will be quite quick, I hope, and if you get lost in it, then read the paper, and if you get lost in that, then give me a bell. Okay, it goes back to Richard Alsop, who is a sort of mountainous figure in traffic control, and he suggested that traffic control systems should take reasonable account of route choice. And typically this is never done. You might want to dispute that question. So the question is, how should green times, for example, respond to traffic flows and queues? And of course, if you have a model that predicts, then you're going to be faced with this decision 10 minutes before the actual reality occurs. And these days, you need to take account of all the different modes. And what I feel is true to a high degree is that the base control strategies at the moment don't meet the current needs above. And it's my strong feeling that we need to look at new control strategies, and in particular ones that maximize network capacity rather than minimize delays. So going back a bit, the classic performance measures of traffic control systems was total delay plus number of stops. And what I'm suggesting is that this is changed to maximizing network capacity. And the classic optimization is a word that is often used, and it's often very hard to know what is meant by it. But in the top system, the idea is that the route choices of car drivers are fixed, whereas in the bottom optimization, maximizing network capacity, we're going to make the assumption that route choices are variable. So the whole paper has these 5 sections, which essentially is the title of the talk. And then finally, there's some results of Gilligate, York, where we did apply gating some years ago. So upstream gating, everybody will be completely familiar with the idea that if you have a long queue downstream, you can shift it upstream with beneficial effects by gating at previous traffic signals. So here we have all the delays on all the routes are large, and that is bad for buses, all buses, by whatever route they're going. And if you have upstream gating at these 2 points, then you can shift these delays upstream, and at least to some degree you can help the buses, for instance, going from 3 to 4. And then you can do the same again to make it go further, and then you can move that one further, and so on. So at least you've gone from large, large, large to small, medium, large, which is a benefit. So this is certainly good for buses on 3 to 4, and not very good still for 1 to 4. So this means that what you've got to think about is not only gating at a position, but also how you're going to control the queue that is now upstream of the gating signal. And for this, I've called merge control. So you could instead store the queue on the link going from 3 or from 2, if, for example, the bus route went from 1 to 4. So this is why you need merge control. So if, in this case, the bus route goes from 1 to 4, then you want to switch the merges in such a way that the queues form away from the bus route. Now that's all pretty sort of simple and obvious, and it has a local impact, and that local impact has a whole network impact, and that whole network impact may be good and it may not be good. So it's always interesting to look at the whole network and how it reacts to a local action, perhaps a local responsive control action. So the whole network in this case is going to be very simple, with just one signal and 2 links. And I'm going to have a local merge control which equalizes the 2 delays. Well, it's quite clear that if you equalize the 2 delays there, and there's anybody on the top route, they're actually going to switch to the lower route. The lower route is narrower, so things are going to get bad in this case. And it's easy to write down equations that show that taking route choice into account, using this policy Q of equalizing the delays, is bad in the stability point of view. So what I'm going to suggest is that we should all swap, slightly exaggerated form of words, to merge control P0 or similar, or at least we should consider it, because from a theoretical point of view, it has good whole network effects rather than simply good local effects. So what is P0? Well, what sort of stability we're looking at? We're looking at the stability of the interaction between route choice and traffic control. And I just want to quote Meniguza, who comments that and this is talking about any responsive control system, that there may be loops that you don't see but which are acting, and they may have good effects and they may, as he's suggesting here, have bad effects. You may have instability. So in this picture here, green time typically swaps towards more loaded stages. Route flow swaps towards less costly routes. In this paper, I'll look at not stages, which have green time, but anti-stages, which have red time. So anti-stages, the anti-stage is red when the stage S is green. So here we have red time swaps toward less loaded stage anti-stages. Route flow swaps towards less costly routes. And with that as the basis, you can look at how red time should react to flows. And so here we have a diagram which shows, in a sense, the loop we had previously, where the drivers are choosing a route, that is the black arrow, and the signal setter is choosing the red time, that is the red arrow. And they both have their separate motivations. And what I am coming to is a quick definition of what P0 does. So if you have flow, red time, and bottleneck delay on two arms of this junction, then the static version of P0 is to choose the red time that equalizes not B1 equals B2, but S1 B1 equals S2 B2, where S is the saturation flow. And dynamics says if one anti-stage, number one, is loaded more than the other, then you decrease the red time on that anti-stage. So the idea is that you combine this dynamic with the natural route choice dynamic. And of course, they both have conservation. The red times in this case add up to 1, and the flows add up to some given demand T. And if everything is in an equilibrium, then we have this condition. And if everything is not in an equilibrium, then we have swaps, which are natural swaps from anti-stage 1 to anti-stage 2 here, and from route 1 to route 2 here. So we have this dynamical system. And we've seen that Q has a bad effect. So what we hope is that this altered version of B1 equals B2 has a good effect. So we just hope that as the days go on and these swaps occur, that you get stability. And in fact, you can prove that under relatively strong conditions, but still it's the best result I know of in this area, that this interaction is stable in this particular case. And you get convergence over time. And that is not only a good thing, it's a very, very good thing because it aids predictability and all sorts of things. And now I'm going to go to Gilligate in York, which was congested for decades with traffic filling the street. And this is a sort of quick sketch, a model of it, where there's a bottleneck indicated there, and that street was typically full of traffic. So if you apply this upstream gating P0 scheme to this network, you have the black dots, which cause extra red time, which limits the exit flow from links 1 and 2. And in this way, you remove the queue at the main bottleneck on link 3. And if you do that, then you consider what particular merge policy to have. Then in the paper, there are 3 ones that are considered. There's an equi-delay policy, which gives rise to delays like this. There's a bias policy, which gives delays which are much less. And there is a different policy, which is called a zipper, which takes every other vehicle, which gives unbounded delays. So this graph is constructed by pushing a dynamical flow through the whole network while maintaining traffic on least cost routes. And time is on the x-axis. So initially the queues form and stabilize in the case of both delay policies, but they're unbounded in the case of the flow policy. So we actually did this in real life, not just in a model. And we didn't do the merge thing, which I've been talking about, but this is the actual record, and this was done by Simon Parrott at York, who was very well known for a number of years. And we introduced upstream gating at a certain day and recorded the queue lengths on Gilligate before and after. And the before ones are on the right. They're the black, rather tall rectangles. And the after data is represented by the rectangles on the left, which are white, or trying to be white. And what this says is that, for example, the queue length was 7 with a frequency of about 3. So this is this simple picture summarizes the effect of this experiment in York in, I think, 2003. Gilligate has many, many bus routes. It has about 5 or 6. People in the audience can help me with that. So this must have had a tremendous benefit to bus travel times along that link. That's it. So what we've done is we've demonstrated upstream gating, including the last slide of Gilligate. We've emphasized, because you want the queues upstream to be in the right place, the need to manage how the merge is controlled. If you take a particular policy which I've specified called queue, then you get instability between route choice and signal setting. And on the other hand, if you choose merge control policy P0, which equalizes S1B1 and S2B2, then you get stability. And in fact, you maximize network capacity with that local control policy. And also we have had the application to Gilligate with the results. So thank you for listening to all that.
Thanks very much indeed, Mike, for a very interesting, stimulating presentation. And I was so relieved that there wasn't so much maths on the board than there was in the paper. But those of you who are want more knowledge about this theory, then please read the paper. So thank you very much indeed, Mike. Any questions?
Hello, it's Peter Ball, independent, formerly of Sheffield, and delighted to see Mike again. I was here, I think, for the 2012 presentation, so it was, and you were still talking about P0 then, weren't you?
And I'll carry on.
Well done. Have York continued to use this merge control?
No, I think the simple answer is no. But I think that if you looked at if you were here for the York presentation, there was a slide where different targets were introduced, including minus 20% on flows. And so I think that the notion of restricting flows is certainly higher up the agenda than it used to be. But I can't say that anybody has taken up this particular control policy, but I'm open to volunteers.
Thanks very much, Mike.
It's very nice to see you as well.
Okay. But I think for everybody, have a look at the paper. It may daunt you with its mathematics. It certainly daunts me with its mathematics. But if you can take away, let's think about things at a fundamental level, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I'd like to add actually that back in 75, I think it was, when I was working with Richard Allsop, I did a study of linking Saturn model with transit and looking for the optimal timings that balance both routes as well as the signal timings. And your diagram where you brought the optimum down to the best optimal explains that important step where you are actually, because what the problem is that if you put in a new signal plan, then it's optimal, so people change their routes to get benefit of the new plan. And then those changes in routes actually renders that plan no longer optimal. And so if you sort of model route changes in Saturn with optimization, you get the optimal plan, which is the one that people will settle down to equilibrium in the future date. And I see that the digital twin that we learned about earlier has the potential to be doing this because it has both the origin destination of routes as well as the actual signal timings. I hope that makes sense.
Brilliant, Margaret, as usual.
Any questions? More questions? I can't see any, in which case, thanks very much indeed, Mike.
Okay.
And we'll go on to the next presentation. The reason why